I've always loved the story in the Gospels where Jesus and the disciples, they're crossing over the Sea of Galilee. This storm starts raging, yet Jesus is just sitting there asleep in the front of the boat. So the disciples, fearing for their lives, they go up to Jesus and they say,
"You're going to need a bigger boat."
So that's not actually how it happens in the Gospel, I'm sure you're aware, but in this video I want to show you how both Jaws and the Gospel of Mark use dramatic irony. Alright, so if we're going to talk about irony, we need to actually know what dramatic irony is. Dramatic irony is when the audience understands something in a story that the characters in the story don't actually understand. But one of the best ways to understand irony is actually just to show you irony, and Jaws is the perfect example. Steven Spielberg gives us a masterclass in irony in the opening scenes of Jaws. The audience is overtly aware that there is a shark lurking in the depths of the water. Meanwhile, all the characters in the film are ignorant of the shark in the water in the beginning of the movie. This leads to a whole host of ironic scenarios that lead to a heightened sense of drama, intensity, and even humor. The morning after the first horrific shark encounter, the sheriff's child with blood on his hands asks his mother,
"Can I go swimming?"
No! God, please, no!
Then, on the sheriff's way to work, he passes by the town's sign. It shows an idyllic swimmer enjoying splashing in the sun, all on a yellow floaty. Later on in the movie, an innocent swimmer is ironically eaten off their own yellow floaty. And then later in the film, this same sign is vandalized to match the actual reality of a shark-infested beach.
Sick vandalism. That is a deliberate mutilation of a public service message. Now, I want those little paint-happy bastards caught and hung up by their Buster Browns.
That's it. Goodbye. I'm not going to waste my time arguing with a man who's lining up to be a hot lunch. I'm going to see you later.
These ironic scenarios make you feel a whole host of emotions. They build drama, they build intrigue, they build intensity. You know something tragic is going to happen, but you can't look away. So what does irony in Jaws have to do with the Gospel of Mark? I can already hear my inquisitive friends saying, "We shouldn't take modern cinematic features and read them back into an ancient text." That's apparently how all ancient historians talk. Yet to this statement I would say, people in the first century were well aware of irony. Cicero, a philosopher from before the time of Jesus, even writes, "Irony, or saying one thing and meaning another, which has a very great influence on the mind of the audience, is extremely entertaining." Furthermore, most people don't realize that the Gospel of Mark actually shares a bunch of similarities to ancient Greek tragedy, and tragedies often used irony as a rhetorical device. Dr. Marianne Beavis says that an influence on Mark that may seem more far-fetched to the modern reader is the suggestion that the Gospels resemble a Greek tragedy. And so if Mark's Gospel does indeed resemble Greek tragedy, it should have ironic features. And when you read it closely, that's exactly what you find. In Dr. C. Clifton Black's book, A Three-Dimensional Jesus, an introduction to the Synoptic Gospels, he spends multiple pages detailing all the ironic features in Mark. One place in Mark with multiple ironic figures and tropes is in the end of Mark, where Jesus is tried and crucified. The irony in this section builds the drama. It draws you in. It intensifies the tragic irony of Jesus' death. So one way irony appears in ancient works is when a character says one thing, but it ironically means something different to the audience. Quintilian, a teacher of rhetoric in the first century, wrote multiple books on rhetoric. He writes, "Irony says something different from what it means. It does not pretend something different, for the whole context is generally quite straightforward." In Jesus' trial scene, we find multiple examples of irony in this kind of way. First, when the religious leaders hold their kangaroo court, they grill Jesus with questions. However, these questions say one thing, but they mean something different to us, the audience. The high priest asks Jesus, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" Jesus responds, "I am." To the casual reader reading in English, this seems like a straightforward question. But to those reading in Greek, this question becomes an ironic confession. The Greek is literally phrased, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One." The character in the story asks a simple question, but it means something different to us. The question about Jesus' identity becomes an ironic confession of faith. This ironic doublespeak happens again in the next scene. When the religious authorities hand Jesus over to the Roman government, Pilate asks him, "Are you king of the Jews?" And Jesus responds, "You say so." Now, Jesus' response may seem odd to those reading in English because Pilate didn't say that Jesus was King of the Jews. But just like before, the question is phrased like an odd, ironic confession. It literally reads, "You are King of the Jews." Pilate's question ironically proclaims Jesus as king. As Quintilian remarks, it says something different than what it means. And then the following narrative keeps repeating King of the Jews over and over and over again. It does this in a straightforward manner, but it is tragically ironic. In verse 9, Pilate responds to the crowd, "Do you want me to release for you the King of the Jews?" Then again in verse 12 he says, "Then what do you wish me to do with the man you call the King of the Jews?" And then in the next scene, they clothe Jesus in this kingly attire. They mock him and they hail him King of the Jews. And when they crucified Jesus, the inscription above his head reads, "The King of the Jews." And then finally, the chief priests and the scribes, they mock Jesus saying, "He saved others. He cannot save himself. Let the Messiah, the King of Israel, come down from the cross now, so that we may see and believe." These ironically phrased questions become tragic, ironic phrases that build the drama and the tragedy as the story unfolds. Another way irony can be shown in an ancient text is when a character's actions or words subvert the audience's expectations. Quintilian writes, "It is irony when we concede that our opponents have qualities which we do not want them to seem to have." After Jesus' death, the prototypical Jewish opponent, a Roman centurion, subverts the audience's expectation for what they would expect from a Roman soldier. The Roman centurion faces Jesus and proclaims, "Truly, this man was the Son of God." This may seem like a simple confession of faith, a model for people to follow or something like that. However, in the context of the Roman Empire, this statement was dripping with dramatic irony. You see, in the first century, people wouldn't expect a Roman soldier to say something like this. Virgil writes, "Behold this nation, the Romans that are yours. Here is Caesar, Augustus Caesar, son of a god." For a Roman soldier to say that Jesus is the Son of God is an ironic and dramatic twist. This is scandalous. Caesar was supposed to be called the Son of God, not Jesus. Moreover, when you consider that this Roman soldier was seen as the prototypical enemy of the Jewish people, this is even more ironic. Dr. Howard Thurman says in his book, Jesus and the Disinherited, in essence, Rome was the enemy. Rome symbolized total frustration. Rome was the great barrier to peace of mind, and Rome was everywhere. The Roman military was indeed everywhere, and Roman soldiers were tools of that imperial oppression. They ensured that Jesus would be crucified and there would be no civil unrest. So this soldier represented the opposition, yet even he ironically recognized the significance of Jesus, the Messiah and the Son of God. Mark is essentially saying, if a Roman soldier can understand who Jesus is, surely you can too. Excuse me. Yeah, what's up? Why does this even matter? This matters because the biblical authors wanted to captivate you. They wanted to make this story enticing. They wanted to emotionally convict you and draw you in. If you've seen Jaws recently, you will know that it uses the drama of a shark in the water to draw you into the story. You know there's going to be a tragedy, but you can't look away. The Gospel of Mark is doing the same thing. The tragic irony builds suspense. It builds drama. It won't let you forget that Jesus is the Messiah and Jesus is the King. And yet in tragic irony, the crowd yells, "Crucify him." You see, when you read Mark and you understand its tragic irony, it brings the story to life. It shows you the utter tragedy of Jesus' death. It shows how humanity struggles to understand who Jesus was, who Jesus is, and why Jesus matters. The tragic irony of Mark is that humanity didn't understand Jesus, and they killed him. This is why Dr. Black insightfully concludes, Mark is a book about God shattering human expectations. Mark as a book shatters everything its readers thought they understood, even the conventions of how a gospel should end. The end of Mark is a tragedy that breaks human expectations, and the Messiah comes into the world and dies a tragic death. And as we all know, the story of Jesus doesn't end at the cross, but it continues through to the resurrection. And the resurrection is probably the greatest irony in all the Gospels. Jesus and his message can't be stifled. It can't be contained by Roman imperial oppression and even death on a cross. Not even death can stop Jesus, the Messiah and the King of the Jews. So if you want to learn more about Jesus, I would recommend, of course, reading the Gospels, but also Dr. Black's book, A Three-Dimensional Jesus. This book is an incredibly useful introduction to Jesus scholarship, and the link is down in the video description below. If you like this kind of content and you want to support the channel, head over to my Patreon and consider becoming a member. Another way to support the channel is simply to subscribe to the channel and to watch this next video. A special thanks to my patrons. Your support means the world to me. Until next time, peace.